Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Monday, May 3rd, 2021. I'm very excited about this video today. I pulled up some things here and there, and we're going to do something a little different today in the way that we make the video and stuff. Still very informative, of course, but I'm hoping that this is going to be somewhat of an actual eye-opener to people that regularly listen to me or anybody else, or people just stumbling across my channel. If you are, thank you for being here. Don't forget, please subscribe so you can keep up to date with what's going on, because I am constantly switching back and forth between channels, dealing with all that stuff. I don't even want to get into that. Just got out of that mindset and I'm back in the groove. So you guys will find out what I have in store for you today. This first one I really just wanted to bring up because I thought it was funny. This is the Anti-Defamation League. We know all about the Anti-Defamation League. This is something that I came across on a separate note first. I really hope that my recordings don't mess up today. You can see the little thing down here. Sometimes it'll cut and it'll corrupt the video. I have to repair it. I hope that does not happen. But if it does, you'll know, because I should have already put a warning out. Anyway, this is the Anti-Defamation League, our favorite, our pals. And this is on defining extremism. Let's see, extremism, terrorism, and bigotry. Oh, man. New World Order, a term used to refer to a right-wing conspiracy theory that became popular among anti-government extremists from the 1990s onwards. New World Order conspiracists believe that a tyrannical socialist one-world conspiracy has already taken over most of the planet and schemes to eliminate the last bastion of freedom, the United States, with the help of collaborators within the government, through repressive measures as well as manufactured crises, such as terrorist attacks and situations. The globalist conspirators seek to eliminate dissent and to disarm Americans so that the New World Order can move in and enslave them. New World Order conspiracists also commonly believe that hundreds of concentration camps have been built in the United States ready to house dissenters, that the government will declare martial law, possibly on a pretext such as responding to a terrorist attack, and that the government will engage in mass gun confiscations. If you've been following me for any length of time, we've already proven this over and over again. We've already established that all of this is 100% true. And I just brought this up to show that, yes, knowing what they are doing makes you a target. It makes you an extremist. It makes you a terrorist and, well, quite frankly, a bigot in their eyes. Which, that's perfectly alright with me. They can call me whatever they want. But I will not sleep until I can either not do this anymore for some reason or some other thing. But the reality is, I'm going to keep doing this as long as I can. And nobody's going to stop me from doing that. Now, let's move on. I just wanted to bring that up to show you guys, because I thought it was kind of funny that they're just so blatant about things. Okay, this one I wanted to bring up because not a lot of people bring this up. And this is something that I've discovered a few years ago. And it happens every single year, but we're going to go ahead and read this. And I really want you guys to tell me what you think, like down in the comments. Tell me what you think about, what is this ad doing? You come up here, you record still, you go away. Alright, tell me what you think this is. This is a massive military drill that they hold every single year. It's called Robin Sage. Now, heads up, militias to invade 21 North Carolina counties in massive Special Forces training exercise. And this article was written March 25th, 2021. Fort Bragg. I actually lived on Fort Bragg for a little bit when my mother and my stepdad first got together, because my stepdad was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne. So I'm familiar with Fort Bragg. This is already come and gone, so just bear with me. And it begun March 27th. U.S. military joined forces with local militias and civilian personnel for a full-scale invasion of 21 North Carolina counties with the goal of subduing the Pineland resistance movement that has taken control and zone encompassing said counties. No, you've not missed the headlines about a growing armed resistance among the longleaf pines of the Old North State. It's just a special forces training exercise. It's called the Robin Sage exercise, and it's the final test for U.S. Special Forces students before matriculation. March 27th to April 11th, Special Forces students will team up with local militias and civilian personnel for combat-style training on private land throughout nearly 24 counties in which they will invade and quell a hypothetical armed resistance, complete with gunfire blanks, flares, and even exploding missiles. The training is about as real as it gets. So real, in fact, that 19 years ago, a Moore County law enforcement officer mistook the action associated with the Robin Sage exercise for an actual active shooter threat, shooting and killing a soldier. Such is the importance of public notice in advance of these incredibly realistic and frightening exercises. The 2021 Robin Sage exercise is built around the fictional narrative of an intrastate breakaway country that's been forcibly carved out of North Carolina by the Pineland resistance movement. After the last 12 months in which America witnessed a very real, or just an idea, movement of Antifa radical leftist groups to carve out autonomous zones in cities around the country, it doesn't sound quite so outlandish as it previously would have. We don't care about that part of it. For whatever reason, the military does not model this fictional resistance after those real-life examples. It could be a vestige of the cultural stereotype of armed resistance being exclusive to right-wing militias, or perhaps it's because they know all too well that the soy boys wouldn't be much of a resistance at all if faced with the actual No, see this? I only brought this up to show you that about the exercise. You know why they don't model it after these quote unquote real life, like the Chaz Autonomous Zone? First of all, that was all a play. Literally a show, just like everything else. They do this, and you can go type in Robin Sage on YouTube. Literally, like either when you're done watching me, or right now as before you come back, or if you're just going to leave now. Either way, go type it in and watch. They literally have people in the back of pickup trucks and in cars out shooting blanks at soldiers who then return blank fire on them. And they do this in these 21 different counties because if you're familiar with that area of North Carolina, it is pretty much laid out like the rest of the United States. If you can navigate through those 21 counties, you can navigate through the United States. They literally do these things. Look down here. The exercise will involve hundreds of personnel doing things that will seem extraordinarily volatile and suspicious. So if you're in the following counties, beware of this impending training. And that's the end of that. But honestly, and these are all the counties right here. Go look it up. And it literally looks like, because it is, training on U.S. soil to fight dissidents who oppose the New World Order. That's all this is. And they do it every single year for that reason and that reason alone. It has nothing to do with the, quote, Antifa or whoever else, and these people that take part in this, these, quote, right-wing militias or whatever they are, they're going to be on the receiving end of this as well. So if then they're helping, but you're going to be on the receiving end of that. You're not going to be with them when they're coming to take you out. I don't get it. I really don't get it. But I just thought it was interesting to show this because this goes on every single year. Every year. Go watch the videos about it on YouTube. But let's move on to something else while we're talking about Hegelian dialectic. This is actually a very good example for me to show you guys how the Hegelian dialectic affects our collective societal mind. This is perfect. Now, it says red states are fighting back against the reset. What does this mean for the future? First of all, no red states are actually fighting back against the reset. They can't. They literally can't. There's nothing that any individual state could do by itself. But I'm going to show you in a minute. This guy's obviously a right-sider, so we'll take this as we go. The past year, I have been writing extensively about what I call the, quote, Great Conservative Migration, a shift in U.S. demographics not seen since the Great Depression. Approximately 8.9 million Americans have relocated since the beginning of the lockdowns, according to the U.S. Postal Service, and a large portion of these people are leaving left-leaning blue states for conservative red states in the West and in the South. States like California, Illinois, New York, and New Jersey were at the top of the list of states people wanted to escape. The response from leftist states has been amusing. California, for instance, has tried to obscure the data on population loss and has dismissed the existence of the migration. They claim that the state population is actually rising, but fail to mention that most of California's population gains have been from babies born along with the increase in illegal immigration. This does not offset the 267,000 individuals and families that left the state. In the last 3 months, 2020 alone, this is an entire city of people gone in 90 days. And where are these people going? Places like Idaho, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, etc. All red states that are fighting back against draconian mandates and other unconstitutional measures. The only outlier seems to be Oregon, which also has seen a population spike, and this indeed appears to be the migration of Californians to the north. This leads some conservative groups to believe there is an invasion going on of liberals into red states. After looking at the data and meeting many people moving to my own area in Montana, I find the liberal invasion narrative to be fraudulent. Leftists don't relocate to red states, at least not very often. They do not run away from their safe spaces. Rather, they relocate an hour or two from the cities they are addicted to. This is what the data from San Francisco shows, with over 80% of people moving from the city staying within California. In other words, some leftists want to get out of the cities, but they don't want to move far from their beloved progressive utopias, and they certainly don't plan on embedding in conservative strongholds and trying to take over. Okay, now, so far, what this article is doing, already it's driving a wedge, boom, right down the middle, left and right, Hegelian dialectic. Also, this whole thing right here happens to be these red states going against the reset, right? So whenever they come out and highlight this in the national media and they say, oh, these states are holding us back and this and that, and they're red states, and what can they do now ever since the event on January 6th? What can they do? Anybody that goes against the reset, they can label you as a QAnon, Trump-supporting, tinfoil hat-wearing, conspiracy theorist, terrorist, extremist, bigot, whatever else you want to call it. That is what the ideas, not the ideas, that is what the Hegelian dialectic allows them to do. These red states, their governments will give the appearance of pushing back, right? Get their populations all riled up, feed them half-truths and sort of false information and whatnot about the reset. Some true, some not. That's how disinformation works. Get them all riled up and then feed them to the wolves, just like on January 6th. What happened? Yeah, come on down to Capitol. We're going to have a big old rally and we're going to do this and that. And then what happened? Trump came out and said, I can't believe you guys all did that. I am appalled. I would never approve of that. You people are insane. Like, just totally turned his back on his base, which was the intention. But there's no real opposition to this great reset. Well, not in the form that you might be thinking. Okay, and then he just basically goes on to talk about The people moving across state lines today are mostly conservatives. They are congregating in massively in red states, and the effects have been rather dramatic. Home prices have skyrocketed due to extreme demand. In Montana, people are buying real estate sight unseen. A lot of it raw land that they are trying to build on. Lumber prices have tripled, and anyone in the construction business is booked a year and a half out. There are new residents actually scouring the message boards looking for anyone that could do work for them. Nobody available. No one I know has seen anything like it in their lifetime. And if you keep going on down, it says, luckily, a lot of these people seem to be on the same page in terms of principles. Those I have met are all conservative, and the majority of them are preppers. They moved here because they know what is coming, and they want to be surrounded by like-minded neighbors when the manure hits the fan. Specifically, they do not want to be caught isolated in a blue state where V passports, mass lockdowns become a regular part of their life for them and their children. They want to remain free. Okay, how many of these corporations in these red states still enforce this stuff? Okay, so Ohio is technically considered it's a swing state, but it's considered red most of the time, especially where I live. It's considered red, trust me. Guess what? You still got to wear a mask when you go into a store. We still got locked down. They're still going to roll out these passports because you won't be allowed in any business. Government doesn't have to do anything. So these people fleeing, it's going to be the entire United States. There's not going to be no more red states, blue states. That's not even a real thing as of right now. They give the appearance that they're against each other because that's the Hegelian dialectic. And it just basically says that there's a rumor going around there that some leftists that live there want to leave. Some have expressed the need to get out, vacation in places like Portland, Oregon, where they feel safe because everyone wears masks. And the guy says, good for them. Hopefully they'll stay there. He says people are miserable excuses for human beings. And they make everyone else around them miserable by constantly whining about how no one follows the rules. So see, this article is driving a wedge. Instead of being like, hey, wake up. This is going on. It has nothing to do with the left or the right side. No, whoever wrote this article is like, my team's better than your team. You can already tell just based on the way that the article is written. Now, here we go. Check this out. This is the part that got me. My suspicion is that when all of this is said and done by the end of 2021, the U.S. will essentially be split into two distinct nations. A leftist Marxist nation that continues to degrade into tyranny, and a conservative nation that people want to escape to so they can keep their liberties. Leftists won't want to live near us, and we certainly will not want to live near them. Hypothetically, it should be a win-win situation, but there are other factors to consider. Really the only other factor you should consider, okay, let's see, leftists won't want to live near them, and they won't want to live near the leftists. So you've already split yourself in your mind from your fellow man. We cannot challenge the New World Order agenda without the human population, and especially in the United States or whatever country you're from, because there are people on here to listen from other countries. If you are not on the same page as the rest of your fellow countrymen, you lose. We lose. There, no ands, ifs, or buts about it. It's a done deal. So all this talk of red state, blue state, don't want to live near them, don't want to live near, you know what? And then that, if this happens, what this guy's suspicion is, and the U.S. will be split into two nations, they've already won. Then they could come in and, quote, restore order. They can come in with their FEMA regions and say, look, we're doing it this way. Oh, it's just a lot. It's really just a lot. I'm going to try to leave a link to this so you guys can go through here and read for yourself if you're interested in this. But I really wanted to bring this on to show the effects of the Hegelian dialectic over a long period of time. And it goes on talking about Virginia government, Oregon and North Carolina. And now look, FEMA is hiring. Now here we go. The bottom line is this. The leftist ideology is collectivist and totalitarian in nature. It's completely incompatible with the conservative principles of liberty, self-determination, meritocracy, limited government, and free market economics. Let me explain something to you guys real quick. You know the actual spectrum, the actual political spectrum, not the one we go on now. Okay, so the actual political spectrum, all the way on the right side, all the way you have, because you need two extremes, right? For a spectrum to exist and to be useful. Two extremes. So all the way on the right side, you have complete absence of government, which is anarchy. And anarchy doesn't necessarily mean chaos and all this other stuff that they make you think. So all the way on the right side is complete absence of government. And this has nothing to do with the political parties of today. This is just the actual political spectrum, what it is. Okay, so all the way on the right, no government. All the way on the left, total government. Total government control. That's where you got your communism, your fascism, your socialism, your all of it. All total government control. Now, in the middle is where we are supposed to be. A constitutional republic with limited government and maximum freedom. You know what the left and the right side today both actually believe in? They both actually believe in big government. And you can't say that they don't, because every Republican president we've had expanded the government. Every Democratic president we had expanded the government. Every Democrat or Republican legislature we've had expanded the government. It's no secret. So now, what you have are the left side and the right side are on the left side of the actual political spectrum. So to me, they're all leftists. Even you right-siders and you people that say that you stand for liberty and all. No, you don't. No, you don't. I'm sorry if this offends you, but you do not stand for liberty. These people wanted the government to come down on these groups of people. Same as the left side. They want the government to come down on the right group of people. It's the same mentality on both sides. That's why the Hegelian dialectic is genius, and that's why they use it. And pretty soon, you're going to have another thing that'll happen, which the right side will get redefined, and it'll move even further to the left. The more we move into government control, that's the way that it works. And I know the conservative side, they can say whatever they want about this and that, but if you go actually talk to one, they all say the same thing. They don't believe in actual freedom, because they still believe that the government should be handing down mandates on some issue or another. They believe that 100%. But I will leave a link to this Zero Hedge article if you are interested in reading it. I have to wait till the video goes up. But I really just wanted to bring this up to show that that's what they're going to say. They're going to say, oh, these red states are going against this sustainability and inclusiveness and all of that. And they're just a bunch of insurrection terrorists from... And then guess what? The whole nation, out of fear, now believes that anybody who goes against the reset or any of that on the individual level is the same as these people that they will associate you with. It's what they've already been doing. They've been doing this. Even before January 6th, they were doing this. But let's go ahead and move on. Okay, now, I'm kind of iffy on bringing this one to you guys today, because I really don't want to get another strike and be suspended for 2 weeks. But you know what? we'll speak in code, maybe it'll slip by. But as you can see, this is from Global Research, March 4th, 2021. The 7-step path from to totalitarianism. There are just 7 steps from situation declaration to permanent totalitarianism, and many jurisdictions are about to start step 5. And it just says that all the Global Research articles can be read in 27 different languages, which is cool. Beautiful. All right, here we go. As if it was planned in advance, billions of people around the world, I don't even like to say that, are being forced step by rapid step into a radically different way of life, one that involves far less personal, physical, and financial freedom. Which is true. We've already lost so many. Here's the template for rolling this out. Step 1. A new situation starts to spread around the world. The WHO declares a situation. International agencies, public health officials, politicians, media, and other influential voices can fan fear by focusing almost exclusively on the contagiousness of the situation and the rising numbers. I'm not sure what else to use for that. I don't want to say anything that'll get flagged because this is really important stuff we're into now and we're going to be going into. Characterizing the V as extremely dangerous. Within a few days, governments at national and local levels also declare states of emergency. At lightning speed, they impose lockdown measures that confine most people to their homes, starting with closing schools and shut down much of the global economy. World markets implode. Happen, right? Of course. The stunned, fearful, and credulous public, convinced over the previous few years that their bodies do not have the natural ability to react to Ps by producing antibodies that confer long-lasting immunity, largely complies willingly. Even still, a year and a half later. The first weekly virtual class on local emergency and crisis responses to the situation is held for mayors and other city officials around the world, coordinated by a handful of American organizations in the academic, medical, financial, political, and transportation spheres. The classes feature guests ranging from Barack Obama to Bill Gates. Probably shouldn't have said their names, but oh well. Step 2. You can already see we're way past step 1 and 2. You're getting ready to see. National, state, provincial, and municipal leaders, as well as public health officials, start daily press briefings. They use them to pump out frightening statistics and modeling, asserting the situation has the potential to kill many millions. They're still doing that. Most of this information is hard to decipher and sheds little real light on the natural course of the spread through each geographic area. Officials and media downplay or distort inconveniently low death tolls from the virus, and instead focus on alarming statistics produced by compliant academic, social media influencers, and high-profile organizations. The main message is that this is a war, and many lives are at stake unless virtually everybody stays at home. Mainstream media amplify the trope that the world is at the mercy of the situation. Simultaneously, central banks and governments hand out massive amounts of cash, largely to benefit the big banks. And they bring in giant private sector financial firms to manage the process, despite these global companies' very poor track record in the 2008-2009 crash. Governments also rapidly start to create trillions of pounds worth of programs that include compensating businesses and workers for their shutdown-related losses. Step 3. There is a concerted effort by all levels of government and public health to very rapidly ramp up testing for viral RNA along with the production of personal protective equipment. They push aside the need for regulation, including quality standards and independent verification of test rates, of accuracy by insisting that fast approval and rollout are imperative for saving lives. Models are released that predict snowballing of numbers of, I'm still not sure what to say in place of that. I'll just say cases, hospitalizations, and deaths even under best case scenarios. At about the same time, public health officials significantly loosen criteria for viral infections, outbreaks, and deaths, particularly in the oldest members of society. That increases the numbers of cases and deaths described to the new situation. The media continue to clamor for more testing and for severe punishment of people who aren't completely compliant with the lockdown measures. As a result, there's little backlash as police and military, with sweeping new powers, enforce these measures and give stiff penalties or even jail terms to those who disobey orders. States also monitor with impunity massive numbers of people's movements via their cell phones. Vast human resources are focused on tracking down people who have had contact with the situation and confining them to their homes. Thus, the portion of the public exposed to the situation remains relatively small. It also contributes to social isolation. Among many effects, this enables those controlled to even further erase individual and collective choices, voices, and power. Are we getting there? Are we getting close to where we're at right now? Let's keep going. Step 4. When the numbers of situations, that's just what I'll call it, and deaths start to plateau, local officials claim it's too early to tell whether the situation has finished passing through their population, and therefore restrictive measures must continue. An alternative narrative is that if such measures aren't kept in place, there will be a resurgence of cases and deaths. Yet another is that the continuing climb in elderly persons' deaths means all bets are off for the time being. They admit that initial models incorrectly predicted there would be a tsunami of cases, ICU admissions, and deaths. However, they assert more time is needed before it can be determined whether it's safe to loosen some of the restrictions and let children return to school or adults go back to work. Officials do not try to calculate the overall skyrocketing cost to their populations and economies of the shutdowns and other measures against, nor do they discuss what cost level may be too high. They and powerful media organizations also push for the massive situation testing overcapacity to be used to surveil the general population for viral D and A in their bodies. It's hard to tell what words they'll flag and what words they won't, because it's very confusing once you start getting into it. If you look at like the analytics on the video and you like really dig into it, you can see like where you said certain things. It's annoying. Meanwhile, new data are published showing the situation has a high capacity to mutate. Scientists and officials interpret this as meaning a larger medical arsenal will be needed to combat it. Step 5. About 2 or 3 weeks later, the dramatic increase in testing for viral D produces the desired goal of a significant upsurge in the number of people found positive for the V. Public health officials add jet fuel to the surge by adding to their case and death tallies the large number of people who are only suspected and not lab tests confirmed to have had an infection. Politicians and public health officials tell the populace this means they cannot return to their jobs or other activities outside the home for the time being. Governments work with public health agencies, academics, industry, the WHO, and other organizations to start to design and implement immunity passport systems, for using the results of the widespread antibody testing to determine who can be released from the lockdowns. This is one of many goals of the 7 steps. Meanwhile, government leaders continue to highlight the importance of miracle cures for besting the V. Step 6. Large-scale human testing of many different types of antivirals and cures begins. Thanks to a concerted push from the WHO, BG and his collaborators, PHGS pharmacia, we'll call it, and biotech companies, governments, and universities. Large swaths of the population don't have the anti-B to the V because they've been kept from being exposed to it. They eagerly accept these medications even though they've been rushed to the market with inadequate safety testing. They believe these medical products offer the only hope for escaping the situation. Step 7. Soon, the new situation starts another cycle around the world, just as flu and other Vs have every year for millennia. Officials again fan the flames of fear by, I think there was a typo there. Fear by posting the potential for millions of deaths among people not yet protected from the situation. They rapidly roll out V and anti-B testing again, while companies sell billions more doses of antivirals and cures. Governments simultaneously seek control of all remaining public assets to global companies. This is because local and national governments' tax bases were decimated during Step 1, and they're virtually bankrupt from their unprecedented spending in the war against the situation and other steps. The overall result is complete medicalization of the response to the situation, which on a population level is no more harmful than flu. Coupled with the creation of permanent totalitarianism controlled by global companies and a 24/7 invasive surveillance police state supported by widespread blossoming of smart technology, the key players repeat the cycle of hysteria and massive administration of antivirals and booster cures every few months, and they implement a variation of steps 1 to 7 when another new situation appears. And then it says, sounds far-fetched, unfortunately it's not. And by reading this, you guys can see exactly where we are and exactly how this is going. I came across that and I was like, holy mother of God on earth and in heaven at the exact same time. This is what is going on. This is the reset. This is the New World Order. They brought it to us under the guise of public health. It's perfect. It's so perfect. I honestly, even though, I want to shake their hand and I want to be like, dude, you guys have done an incredible job at this. Incredible. I never in a million years would have expected something like this to be that successful. All of it. All of it. All of it. Let's move on. I meant to bring this one up when we were going through Hegelian dialectic stuff, but it's good that we'll do it here. Now, this, again, you should already know that I don't play no left-right paradigm. I don't play that. What I'm showing you is how they're setting it up to go against anybody who goes against them. Anyway, this one is entitled A Liberalish New World Order. Where do rights fit into international solutions with nations like China or Russia? Here's a hint. They don't. You will have no rights. We've already established this long ago. President Biden and other world leaders attend a virtual climate conference April 22nd. Check them out. There they are in action. Ever since James Monroe instructed the European powers to keep their colonialization efforts out of the Western Hemisphere, historians have looked for doctrines, the big ideas that guide presidents in their conduct of foreign policy. After last week's virtual climate conference, political observers can begin to see the Biden doctrine will both clarify and complicate the tasks of U.S. foreign policy. Simply put, the Biden doctrine holds that geopolitical competition must not be allowed to drive world history. Competition with China is real and must be vigorously pursued. But the essential goal of American foreign policy is to construct a values-based world order that can tackle humanity's common problems in an organized and even collegial way. Already they're talking about setting aside national governments, implementing world government. This, Bidenites argue, is hard-headed realism. During the Cold War, self-interest, not starry-eyed idealism, kept American presidents and Soviet leaders from pushing the nuclear button, just as it was self-interest that led both sides to seek to limit their nuclear rivalry through arms control. That's not what happened. Both sides didn't seek to limit their nuclear rivalry. The United Nations made them. In the 21st century, problems like climate change, peace, financial regulation, and cybersecurity simply cannot be solved by national governments acting alone. That reality, the new administration believes, forces world leaders to work together whether they like it or not. So, yes, they're saying that none of this can be solved by national governments working alone. It kind of just worked out for them, didn't it? Didn't it? Just so happened to work out for them just like this. Let's see. Global problems are so important and the consequences of failing to address them so immediate that countries have no choice but to cooperate. That cooperation reduces the scope and changes the nature of geopolitical competition, just as the threat of nuclear destruction kept the Cold War cold. So threats like climate change and situations will limit international rivalries today. Because they're building a world government. What else could this mean? They're literally building a world government, the one that they've always wanted, and telling us, like, you see, guys, it's good, though. It's good because then, China, because the big boogeyman, right? Anything, right? Under these circumstances, Washington's best response to geopolitical challenges from countries like China and Russia, Bidenites believe, is to change the subject. The U.S. can't ignore the military and strategic facts of life, but order building, not coup counting, should be the goal. Even as America fends off Chinese and Russian efforts to undermine its global strategic position, Washington should constantly push the theme of common efforts to solve common problems. Yeah, New World Order. Hey, there was that commercial I told you guys about, the Facebook commercial where they support updating internet regulations. And I was saying that if Facebook supports updating internet regulations, it's probably not a good thing. But basically, this one just is saying that, well, we could just read the last two paragraphs. It's not much. I thought it was longer. That's where last week's climate summit comes in, as world leaders from Xi Jinping to Boris Johnson issued solemn through non-binding pledges to reduce their carbon emissions. The kind of world President Biden hopes to build seem to swim into view. One summit doesn't make an order, however, and recent spats with Turkey and India point to some of the difficulties the Biden doctrine will counter. Mr. Biden's declaration that the Ottoman Empire's massacres of its Armenian subjects during World War I amounted to genocide marks a dramatic break in U.S.-Turkish relations. But the message was unmistakable. The Biden administration cares enough about universal standards on human rights to risk explosive quarrels, even with treaty allies. And no, the Biden administration does not give two shits about human rights. Actually, you know what? Yeah, he does. The rights granted to you by your world government. We went over that in my United Nations videos. If I didn't delete them, they should still be up. But they're literally just starting to casually talk about the New World Order now. The one that doesn't exist. Moving on. Okay, now begins the most important part, I think. Well, besides that one thing I read about the 7 steps. This is 14 characteristics of fascism. If you remember before, when we were going through New World Order quotes and reading about Manly P. Hall and all that, back when I first started, you know that this world government they want is going to be a combination of fascism, collectivism, communism, totalitarianism, All of it under one tent. And that's why all the great dictators of the 20th century, as you can see at the top here, those were all tests to see what would work and what wouldn't, to implement into their new world order. That's why they had fascist Italy, National Socialist Germany, which Nazi is gutter slang for National Socialism. What'd you have? Soviet Russia, Communist China. You had all of them. And what we were at the time. Not anymore, but what we were at the time. Okay, let's see how many of these pertain to the United States. This is the eye-opener I was talking about. To get people to accept that our form of government is not what you are told. It's not currently even close to being what you are told. 1. Powerful and continuing nationalism. Fascist regimes tend to make constant use of patriotic mottos, slogans, symbols, songs, and other paraphernalia. Flags are seen everywhere, as are flag symbols, on clothing and in public displays. Gee, that sounds a lot like the United States. Sure it does. Disdain for the recognition of human rights. Because of fear of enemies and the need for security, the people in fascist regimes are persuaded that human rights can be ignored, in certain cases because of need. People tend to look the other way or even approve of torture summary, executions, assassinations, long incarcerations of prisoners, etc. That sounds a lot like the United States today. 2 for 2 so far, 2 for 2. Oh, don't worry, there's more. But wait, there's more. For $7.99, you can get identification of enemies, scapegoats as a unifying cause. People are rallied into a unifying patriotic frenzy over the need to eliminate a perceived common threat or foe. Racial, ethnic, or religious minorities, liberals, communists, socialists, terrorists, etc. That sounds like the first 20 years and counting of the 21st century. Right? Supremacy of the military. Even when there are widespread domestic problems, the military is given a disproportionate amount of government funding, and domestic agenda is neglected. Soldiers in military service are glamorized. 4 for 4, I'd say. Rampant sexism. The governments of fascist nations tend to be almost exclusively male-dominated under fascist regimes. Traditional gender roles are made more rigid. Opposition to abortion is high, as is homophobia and anti-gay legislation and national policy. You can kind of get a mix on that one here. But that's okay, because not everything goes into what makes up a fascist, and other things in the United States are covered under what makes it a communist nation. We'll get there. Controlled mass media. We don't even have to read this one. Let's read it anyway. Sometimes the media is directly controlled by the government, but in other cases the media is indirectly controlled by a government regulation or sympathetic media spokespeople and executives. Censorship, especially in wartime, is very common. I'm a walking censorship right here. Here's one. Obsession with national security. Fear is used as a motivational tool by the government over the masses. Gee, we hear national security every single day, no matter who's talking on the tube. Religion and government are intertwined. Governments in fascist nations tend to use the most common religion in the nation as a tool to manipulate public opinion. Religious rhetoric and terminology is common from government leaders, even when the major tenets of the religion are diametrically opposed to the government's policies or actions. Sounds about right. Corporate power is protected. Industrial and business aristocracy of a fascist nation often are the ones who put the government leaders into power, creating a mutually beneficial business-government relationship by power elite. That's literally world news. A 5-year-old could turn the TV on and see that. Puh. Labor power is suppressed because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a fascist government. Labor unions are either eliminated entirely or severely suppressed. Pretty sure they have anti-union laws and regulations in corporations. I know at my work, if you even say the word union, you get fired. Facts. Number 11, disdain for intellectuals and arts. Fascist nations tend to promote and tolerate open hostility to higher education and academia. It's not uncommon for professors and other academics to be censored or even arrested. Free expression in the arts is openly attacked, and governments often refuse to fund the arts. Kinda. Obsession with crime and punishment. Under fascist regimes, the police are given almost limitless power to enforce laws. The people are often willing to overlook police abuses and even forego civil liberties in the name of patriotism. There is often a national police force with virtually unlimited power in fascist nations. Hello? DHS? Multi-jurisdictional? All of our police are technically one. For instance, I live on the Ohio River border. I work in West Virginia. I can be in West Virginia in 15 minutes. If something happens in West Virginia, our police from over here go there to assist across state lines and across county lines. Rampant cronyism and corruption. Fascist regimes almost always are governed by groups of friends and associates who appoint each other to government positions and use governmental power and authority to protect their friends from accountability. It's not uncommon in fascist regimes for national resources and even treasures to be appropriated or even outright stolen by government leaders. And last but not least, fraudulent elections. Sometimes elections in fascist nations are a complete sham. Other times elections are manipulated by smear campaigns against or even assassination of opposition candidates, use of legislation to control voting numbers or political district boundaries, manipulation of the media. Fascist nations also typically use their judiciaries to manipulate or control elections. Do you guys see the resemblance so far? How many fascist characteristics do the United States have? A lot. Let's move on. Okay, now here we are at examples of totalitarianism. Totalitarianism refers to a political system in which all authority is in the hands of the state. In a totalitarian society, all control of public and private life are government run. And they show you a picture of, I would say, the most famous dictator. What is going on? Stop. Okay, we don't have to read through all this because I wanna get going. I'll try to leave a link for this one. This website's being really laggy. Okay, so while authoritarian regimes place all the power into a single dictator or group, that power is only political. Within totalitarian regimes, the leadership controls nearly all aspects of state, from economical to political to social and cultural. Totalitarian regimes control science, education, art, private lives of residents to the degree of dictation, proper morality. The reach of the government is limitless. Already sounds like home, right? Good old USA, right? Okay, and these are just the examples of totalitarian governments. We know about all this. We know about these dictators we were never supposed to repeat. Examples of totalitarian regime strategies that gain control of the nation include having a dictatorship. We technically have that. We technically have a one-party corporate system, employing only one ruling party. Technically, yes, because both sides are the same. Rule through fear. Check. Censorship of media. Double check. Propaganda in media, government speeches, and through education. Check. Criticism of the state is prohibited. Almost check. Mandatory military sign-up. Not quite yet. Secret police forces, check. Controlling reproduction of the population, either in hopes to increase or decrease. Gonna be check. Targeting of specific religious or political populations, check. Development of a nationalist party, sort of check. But I wanted to bring that up to show that we also have a lot of totalitarian characteristics in our new world government. Let's move on. And last but not least, I have for you today parts of the Communist Manifesto, 10 Steps from Socialism to Communism, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And this is straight from the book too. So we've seen above that the first step in the revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of ruling class to win the battle of democracy. The proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by degree all capital from the bourgeoisie, to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state, of the proletariat is organized as the ruling class, and to increase the total productive forces as rapidly as possible. Of course, in the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads on the rights of property and on the conditions of bourgeois production. By means of measures, therefore, which appear economically insufficient and untenable, but which the course of the movement outstrip themselves, necessitate further inroads upon the old social order, and are unavoidable as the means of entirely revolutionizing the mode of production. These measures will, of course, be different in different countries. Nevertheless, in most advanced countries, the following will be pretty generally applicable. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. We're there now, pretty much. A heavy progressive or graduated income tax, check. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. They're working on it. Confiscation of the property of all emigrants and rebels. Getting there. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of national bank with state capital and executive monopoly. Check. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. Check. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with the common plan. Check. Bureau of Land Management. Anybody? Equal liability of all to work. Check. Right? Equal opportunity. That's what they call it here. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Not necessarily. But that's okay because, like I said, other parts of other forms of government pick up. They're using all of this, combining it. Just saying. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of all the distinction between town and country by a more equable distribution of the populace over the country. Agenda 2030, right? Free education for all children in public schools, check. Abolition of children's factory labor in its present form, check. Combination of education with industrial production. Sort of check. You go to school and they teach you how to be a good citizen, a working citizen, right? Now check this out. When in the course of development, class distinction have disappeared and all production has been concentrated into the hands of a vast association of the whole nation, the public power will lose its political character. Political power, properly so called, is merely the organized power of one class for oppressing another. If the proletariat, during its contest with the bourgeois, is compelled by the force of the circumstances to organize itself as a class, if, by means of revolution, it makes itself the ruling class, and as such sweeps away by force the old conditions of production, then it will, along with these conditions, have swept away the conditions for the existence of class antagonisms and of classes generally. and will thereby have abolished its own supremacy as a class. In place of the old bourgeois society with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. So as you could tell, the last few things I read you could see that the New World Order encompasses all of that. All of it. And there's more. It's not just these ones I brought up. There's more. We have characteristics of fascism, authoritarianism, communism. What else? I'm sure we got a little bit of a monarchy thrown in there. Because we see our politicians sometimes as royals, which is super weird. Like, I don't know. It's all very concerning, but also empowering to speak against it. And I advise everybody to speak against what's going on. But we're at an hour, so I will go ahead and stop it here. It's perfect. And as always, we shall pray to the Most High. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not unto temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.